Jim, thank you so much for chatting with me. I am looking forward
Glad
to
to be here.
talking with yeah, I'm looking forward to talking with you about your work on the film See You When I See You, which congratulations on the film getting into Sundance. How do you feel
Thank
about
you very
that?
much. It feels really good. I mean, obviously it's a special year and you probably will hear this from other filmmakers, but having a movie in Park City as the final Sundance in Park City, where it all began, feels
Mhm.
extra special. And this is a particularly meaningful movie, both because of the content and also just the experience making it. This family story, we all became a family in the making of it. And so it was very thrilling when Jay told me that it made it into Sundance for sure.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
You were mentioning about how this is a very special time for this movie to get into Sundance because this is the last time the Sundance will be in Park City.
Mhm.
I want to know a little bit more about your history with Sundance. Do you have history
Mhm.
here, or yeah, tell me about your relationship with Sundance.
Yes. Yes. So I was actually just reflecting on that yesterday. I had a movie, my first narrative feature. I actually came out of commercials and music videos and documentaries and things. And I was hired at long last to do my first narrative feature that got into the competition at Sundance in 2013. And the
Wow.
filmmaker was Joey Soloway. And it was actually Joey's first feature as well. So and that began a very incredible collaboration. And actually, that's how I met Jay Duplass, the director of this, because Joey went on to create the TV show Transparent, and I worked on that for 5 seasons, and that was another very tight knit family experience. And I've since had a handful of other projects at Sundance after Afternoon Delight, which was Joey's movie. I was actually back there with a short film that my wife and I produced for a young filmmaker called "It's Not About Jimmy Keene," and that was a episodic in their little episodic series thing. And then I produced and DP'd another short film that was there in 2018, I think. But it's been a few years since I've been there, and it'll be good to go back and bring up my winter clothes.
Yeah, I'm sure it'll be great for you to be back and be here when when the movie premieres. I was
Yes.
fortunate enough to have the chance to see this movie at an early screening, and it was interesting because Jay was there and he had a Q and A and was able to talk a little bit about the film.
Mm,
He had mentioned in making the film there were big swings that they took creatively and with the story
mm,
and everything. And so I want to ask you, as far as cinematography goes, can you tell me
mm,
what you saw as like really big swings in
mm.
filming this movie?
Sure. So the premise of the movie, right, is that there's a family, and the main character played by Cooper Rafe. He is best friends with his younger sister who had some mental health challenges and ends up taking her own life. And it's about him, the Cooper character, struggling to find his way in the world without his best friend and younger sister, as well as the family's grief and shock and everything, right? So in many ways, it was going to be a kind of not typical, but like it was very much going to be an intimate portrayal of this family. The unique thing and the big swings that I think Jay was probably referring to are these kind of not dream sequences is not the right way to say it. It's like the main character, Aaron, has these memories of times with his sister, like when they were hanging out, just a night out at a local bar or whatever. And then these memories become conversations, then become something even more surreal that I don't want to give everything away, but
Mm-hmm.
yeah, but basically to say like it evokes the afterlife a little bit,
Mm-hmm.
right?
It's a good way of
And
putting it.
and so the how to do that, how to go into sort of the surreal, almost magical realism realm that still feels rooted to the truth or the groundedness of the rest of the movie, but also gives you a glimpse into what is essentially Aaron's state of mind, or his broken heart and his broken soul. It's like what manifests in these visions. And so kind of pulling that off was its own unique creative challenge. I think we pulled it off, and I think what I will say is, and my hope is that it is enough, it's evocative enough, and kind of captures, rather than it being like, I'm trying to think of how to talk about this without spoiling anything. Basically, I think that those sequences work, and I'm proud of what we pulled off in the on the budget we had and in the tight filming schedule that we had, because it was really an expression of what Aaron's going through, as opposed to needing to be like, we're never going to compete with like the visual effects of a Marvel movie or whatever, right? But it's like what feels homespun and rooted to this character's journey. And I feel like in that way, the swings that we took, I think, pay off. I hope.
Yeah, no, it is, I think you're doing a great job talking about it without talking about it. You don't want to spoil the
Hmm.
movie because there are these
Hmm.
really interesting sequences that you just kind of have to experience. And so
Hmm.
I think that's a good tease for what happens in the film.
Okay, good.
Um,
Glad to
but
hear.
of course, Cooper Ray plays the main character here.
Hmm.
I'm not gonna lie. When this movie was announced at Sundance, the very first name that I saw and gravitate to is Cooper Rafe. He's someone that I'm a big
Hmm.
fan of. But I think there's a lot of talent on
Hmm.
this
Oh,
this
yes.
cast, and so I'm interested in capturing that and how you captured that dynamic. Talking a little bit more about capturing the energy and dynamic between this family, especially with Cooper Rafe's particular style of energy and
Hmm.
comedic
Hmm.
timing.
Hmm. Well, so I think I'm going to credit a lot of it to Jay and his producing team that did the casting. But Jay has a way, both as an actor and as a director, of helping people kind of let other stuff fall away and kind of get to the essence of the connection between characters. What does it feel like to be a family? We didn't have that much rehearsal time, but again, in these very short periods, Jay was able to sort of help the actors find their way to what I think on screen feels very familiar, right? They do feel connected as a family. There's the sibling, issues between the older sister and Cooper's character. And, David Duchovny and Hope Davis as the parents were fantastic. Of course, Caitlin Dever is, I think, an amazing actress. And it was really fun to work with her as the, younger sister. And I, I think it's just a matter of the energy that a director brings in, and as the DP, I contribute to that energy on set as well. And as in a way, there's three people, right? There's like the director, the AD, and the DP, who can really affect the feeling on set. And given my history with Jay and the way that I operate as well, and our amazing AD Steve Moore, who is an Atlanta-based guy, like all of us came into this in this sort of gentle way. Like I keep making this gesture where it's like we're holding this space for these actors. We're holding the space for this family to exist. And the powerful thing, and the reason why I started off saying like this is extra meaningful because of the nature of this project is, we had Adam, the writer, and this is his true story. Like his best friend was his sister. She did die by suicide. And it took him a long time to even begin to speak words about it. And then he wrote about it. And then that became this movie, right? And he's right there on set. And there were times when, you know, he was so moved by what he was seeing, and you couldn't help but feel like not a responsibility exactly, but like, oh, this is deep, man. This is something real, right? This is we're making a story, we're making believe, but it's also based on this actual family's experience and Adam's experience. So that made the whole thing feel really special and profound at times.
Yeah, totally. I'm going to come back around to that. This being based on a true story. There's
Hmm.
a topic I want to address before we end, but before we get to that, I want to know more about the equipment you used, the
Hmm.
camera you used. Tell me more
Sure, sure.
about how you filmed this.
Right. Well, I'm pretty much an Alexa person. I
Mm.
love the Alexa 35. I mean, I've used different iterations of their cameras over the years, but I just think it's very gorgeous in a very kind of understated way. Like
Mhm.
it's not showy. It just arrives in this sort of cinematic rich flavor. So Alexa 35 was the cameras that we used, and then um, you know the for lensing, I wanted something, and here's how I'll come at that answer.
Mhm.
I look at lenses from almost an emotional point of view.
Mhm.
I want to know what the characteristics, as you're putting up different lens widths and things like that. And like, when does this lens look too soft and when is it too sharp, whatever. Like there's all the technical side of things,
Mhm.
but like I'm looking for a gut emotional response when I put a lens on a camera. And the thing that did it for me for this story is these vintage Canon lenses, K35s, which I've used when they were, you know, hunted down and scrapped from different used camera shops around the country, and like almost falling apart when you're using them.
Mhm.
They've since been rehoused by different companies, and particularly I got these from Panavision in Atlanta. But the K35s are really special. They are flawed and a little bit soft, and there's a kindness. I've said this to somebody else, but like to one of my friends when I was talking about why I chose the lenses, there's almost like a kindness or a compassion in the lens. So that felt exactly right for this story as we're looking, we're bearing witness to what this family has gone through.
Mhm. Yeah, really great insight. I love how you describe lenses with kindness and compassion. That's a
Mhm.
really cool way of looking at cinematography and visual. How you're visually capturing things.
Yeah. Well,
Uh,
thanks. And it took me a while in my career to like even understand or acknowledge like that. That's just how I operate.
Yeah.
Like other DPs are like, again, people, there's more than one way to do things, and there's more than one way in the process of like gathering your tools or gathering your crew. But it's like I've learned that it's like that emotional connection is everything for me. So it's
Mm.
like I don't need to know all the gizmos or all the new gear. I just need to have a feeling when I look at something, if that makes sense.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I guess speaking about your career, I would love to hear advice that you might have for beginning cinematographers or people who want to get into capturing a movie.
Hmm. I mean, there's sort of the go-to cliche things like just make stuff,
Mm.
but that is essential, obviously. Like just
Great.
get out there. I'm currently kind of mentoring this young woman who's in her early 20s, and um, she'll call me and say like, "Oh, I heard about this, freebie thing for 3 days, but I have to go out to the desert and do it." And I'm like, "Go for it," because not only are you going to learn a lot, right? You're going to learn what you like and what you don't like, but and also like maybe you're going to find the people that you really connect with as storytellers, as filmmakers, right? So even the crappiest on paper looking thing, or the cheapest whatever, you're not going to make any money. You're going to get paid in La Croix and stale pretzels or something like this. Like getting out there and doing it. And I think for me the biggest thing specifically to being a DP, although okay, so I started out as I was a light in the lighting crew, then I became a gaffer and then a DP. And I remember a day when as a gaffer I was like, oh, there isn't one way. And it might seem like a simple bit of you know acknowledgement or truthiness, but it's like, oh, so there's more than one way to light this room, like a nighttime bedroom, for example, and that I can find my path, and there's no comparing it to like what would somebody else have done. It's just like this is where I'm heading, and this is the way that I'm choosing. There's not a right or a wrong way kind of thing, and especially as a DP, I think that has served me where it's just like I still feel like I'm, coming up with solutions at the last minute, or like flying by the seat of my pants, or, we're winging it. I'm winging it with the director. And we're like, I think this is a good idea. And then we try it. The good news is that obviously with experience, you get to know what's going to work or not. But the other thing that I often say to my crew is like the camera knows. So it's like you think this shot's a great idea. You think this lens is exactly it, where we're going to put it, how we're going to move it. And it's like it just falls flat the minute you put the camera up. And it's like, and I will say to my crew, it's like the camera knows, like it's telling us, do not, this is not how you want to shoot this moment. So I guess it's just little things like, and I think maybe the overarching theme of what I just said was like we're all still learning, we're all still discovering, and that's part of the thrill and the fun. But just to know you don't have to know everything right out of the gate.
That's really great insight. Thank you for that.
Sure, sure.
That's awesome. I have one more question for you.
Yeah, yeah.
One of the things that stood out in the movie is memories, kind of like what you were mentioning. But
Mm-hmm,
what I was identifying here, the story is based on a memoir, which is memories documented in writing.
mm-hmm,
And the movie starts and ends with this idea that photographs are a very important way of preserving memories as well. So,
mm-hmm,
as a cinematographer, I want to get your insight on what you think or how you think the craft of video recording
mm-hmm.
impacts capturing memories.
Hmm. And when you say video recording, do you mean the world of digital versus film?
Honest,
Or
I think digital recording, just as far as like capturing motion,
mm-hmm,
we have written ways of capturing memories, we have still ways of capturing
mm-hmm,
memories, and you get to work in this medium of motion and motion
mm-hmm.
picture.
Hmm.
Obviously, movies are a way to tell stories and to
Hmm.
display other people's perspectives. But do you find that like how do you find video recording
Hmm.
impacting how you capture and preserve memories?
Hmm. So a couple of things came to mind. It's a very interesting question. One is that I got married now many years ago, 28 years ago. But I remember that my wife and I said, let's not watch the video of our wedding because we want to remember what it felt like to be there, as opposed to like, because I do believe this, once you see a recorded version of something that you experienced, your memory is that now affected, tainted, we'll say, whatever, by the viewing of that thing, right?
Hmm. Hmm.
So there is that part of it. So our own personal memories are, you know, and again, of course, even our memories are subjective, right?
Hmm.
But it's like, see, we were there at our wedding, everyone was having a good time, and then you find out, no, your, siblings were fighting backstage, whatever. No, but so the purest form, right, is just the memory of.
Yeah.
The thing that I love and have always been drawn to about movies and storytelling, whether it's on digital or film or whatever, is like it's this way of inviting other people into a human experience. And so that could mean, as simple as watching a documentary about, people trying to figure out how to survive in the Sudan, or whatever it is, like things that we don't think about in our daily life. We're invited into this place and time and life, and it connects us as human beings, right? Um, and I think, as far as, in a way, that becomes a collective memory, right?
Hmm.
I also just flashed on, there's a series of documentaries that were all like the time lapse, like Koyaanisqatsi, if you're familiar with those from like 15 years ago or whatever,
Hmm.
like beautiful, but it's like portraits of life on the globe, right? And in a way, maybe that is my answer. It's like these all become our memories.
Hmm.
Every movie that's made, every documentary becomes part of our collective memory. And that's kind of pretty freaking cool.
That is freaking cool. It's one of the reasons I love doing this. I love watching
Yeah.
movies. I love talking with, uh, you know, uh, craft teams and specialists like you who get the opportunity to capture these movies and
Awesome.
make these things happen. So, thank you, Jim, so much again
Oh,
for
yeah.
having this conversation with me. I really appreciate it. And I travel safe getting to Park City, and
Thank you very much.
best of luck with your career
Very
going
excited.
forward. Okay.